On Sunday, December 1st, 1946, Paula Jean Welden woke up on the campus of Bennington College in Vermont and decided that she was going to go for a walk. Nothing dramatic, nothing worth writing home about. She didn't bring a bag and didn't bring a map. She had on a red parka with a fur-trimmed hood, jeans, and sneakers. Light, like she was just stepping out for some fresh air. She told her roommate she was heading out for a hike on the long trail. It was around 2:45 in the afternoon. The sun was already starting its slow drop behind the mountains. Paula was 18, a sophomore, smart, quiet, the kind of girl who didn't cause problems and mostly kept to herself. Her family lived in Stamford, Connecticut, and she didn't go home for Thanksgiving break. She said she had too much schoolwork. That wasn't totally true. She and her dad had argued before the holiday. Not a blow-up fight, but enough that she wanted to keep some space. So she stayed behind on campus. She worked a double shift at the dining hall that day, then walked out the front gate and disappeared. Like, literally, disappeared. No one saw her after about 4 p.m. There were a few witness sightings on the trail, all of them saying the same thing. She looked happy, maybe a little distracted, and then nothing. No one found a footprint, no torn fabric, no disturbed ground. It was just like the forest took her. And what followed, chaotic searches, bizarre theories, and a whole state scrambling to figure out what happened, led to one of the biggest changes in Vermont law enforcement history. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, we have to talk about the trail and how a girl in a red coat walked into the woods and never came back out. On paper, Paula Jean Welden had no reason to vanish. She was doing well in school. No disciplinary issues, no drug use, no drinking, no sketchy boyfriend lurking around. She wasn't failing her classes or talking about dropping out. Her friends didn't notice anything off about her behavior, at least not enough to worry. But if you start looking closer, there were a few cracks. She'd recently picked up an interest in botany. That sounds innocent, and it was, but she'd been skipping meals and keeping to herself more than usual. Her roommate said she'd seem blue in the days before she disappeared, which, translated from 1946 college girl slang, basically means that she was a little depressed. Still, nothing really out of the ordinary. That Sunday morning, Paula had worked a breakfast and lunch in the dining hall. She came back to her room, tired, saying she was through with studying and wanted to get some fresh air. No red flags, no drama, just a quiet girl looking for a quiet hike. At 2:45 p.m., she left her dorm in casual clothes, jeans, sneakers, sweater, and that red parka. It wasn't snowing yet, but it was cold, the mid-30s, and the kind of Vermont cold that creeps into your shoes and lingers. Paula didn't take any gloves, didn't take a scarf, no overnight bag, no extra socks, nothing to suggest that she was planning to be gone more than a few hours. She walked out of the college gate and started heading north. Several people saw her. A gas station owner said he spotted a girl in a red coat running playfully near a gravel pit, kind of skipping along like she was in a very good mood. Around 3 p.m., a local contractor named Louis Knapp picked her up while driving east toward the Long Trail trailhead. He said she told him she was going for a hike. He asked if she was dressed warmly enough. She said she was fine. He dropped her off near the entrance to the trail, and this is where things start getting weird. Because just minutes later, Knapp's daughter looked out the window of their house, which faced the road Paula would have been walking along, and did not see her. The road's straight and open, not a lot of places to duck out of view. Paula should have still been visible, but she was already gone. That was the last time anyone saw her clearly. Alive, on that road. And while no one knew it yet, that short ride was the beginning of a mystery that no search party, no police officer, and no detective has ever solved. The Long Trail isn't just a name, it's a real thing. Vermont's famous hiking route. It stretches over 270 miles through the Green Mountains, and it's not exactly beginner-friendly, especially not when the sun's setting and you're wearing sneakers. But Paula did not seem fazed. Multiple hikers saw her between 3:30 and 4 p.m. heading north on the trail. She asked for directions, chatted briefly, smiled, said thank you. She was polite, soft-spoken. One of the last confirmed sightings was by an older man named Ernest Whitman. He had a cabin near the trail, and Paula stopped to ask him how far the trail went. He told her there was a fork a few miles ahead. She said she wasn't dressed for night hiking. She didn't seem concerned. That was it. She walked off, and then she was gone. When Paula didn't come back that night, nobody panicked. Her roommate assumed she was pulling a late night in the library, or maybe just needed time to clear her head. But the next morning, still no Paula. Bennington College notified her parents, and that's when things kicked into high gear. Her father, William Welden, friends called him Archie, drove up from Connecticut immediately. The college canceled classes. Students formed search parties. People were combing the woods, shouting her name, tossing colored confetti on the ground so they'd know where they'd already looked. Seriously, confetti. This was the system. They didn't find anything. They didn't find her coat. They didn't find footprints, no broken branches, no sign that Paula had ever walked back out of the trees. Then they realized something bigger. Vermont didn't have a state police force. There was no one actually in charge of this kind of thing. The local sheriff was overwhelmed. The search was disorganized and slow. Archie Welden was furious. He basically took over the investigation himself, started pulling in favors. Police from other states were brought in, bloodhounds, planes, National Guard soldiers. Still, nothing. Once the search failed, the theories kicked in. Some thought she got lost, wandered off the trail, maybe fell and died of exposure. But they scoured that trail. Helicopters, dogs, boots on the ground, and they never found a trace. Others thought maybe she ran away. There were rumors, nothing confirmed, that she had a secret boyfriend. Maybe she wanted a fresh start. But she didn't take money or clothes or anything that suggests that she was planning an escape. One idea was that she had amnesia. Seriously, this was the 1940s, so ran away and forgot who she was a real theory. But if that were true, someone would have recognized her somewhere, and no one ever did. Then there was the possibility of suicide. Some friends said she'd seemed a little down lately, but there was no note, no clear trigger, and again, no body. Which left one final theory: foul play. There was one person who made investigators uneasy, a man named Fred Gaudette. He lived near the trail in a shack and had a history of violent outbursts. The day Paula disappeared, he'd been fighting with his girlfriend. After the argument, he left, alone. Or so he said. His story changed a few times. First, he was home all night. Then he wasn't. He said he'd gone for a drive. Later, he claimed he wasn't even in the area. Years later, according to rumors, he told someone he knew where Paula was buried, within 100 feet, supposedly. When police confronted him, he brushed it off as a joke. Nothing stuck. No physical evidence, no confession. Just weird behavior and a couple of offhand comments. Enough to make you suspicious, but not enough to make an arrest. After 2 weeks, Paula's father went back to Connecticut, frustrated, heartbroken, empty-handed. But he didn't stop pushing. He kept talking to reporters, kept calling out Vermont for how poorly the search had been handled. And it worked. Paula's disappearance embarrassed the state into taking action. 7 months later, July 1947, Vermont created the Vermont State Police, a direct result of this case. So yeah, Paula was never found, but her case changed something. And that's rare. Over the years, Paula's story faded from the headlines, but never really disappeared completely. She became the first and most famous missing person in what's now called the Bennington Triangle. That's a name for a cluster of weird vanishings that happened in the area between 1945 and 1950. 5 people gone without a trace. Some people talk about alien abductions or interdimensional rifts, a cryptid dragging hikers into the trees, but nothing concrete ever came from those theories. What we do know is this. On December 1st, 1946, Paula Jean Welden walked into the woods wearing a red coat. She smiled. She asked for directions. She was polite. She didn't seem scared. And then she was never seen again. No answers, no closure, no trail to follow. Just silence. The kind that settles in when the trees get too dense and no one's left to call your name. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Mystery. If you haven't already, hit subscribe so the next story finds you instead of the other way around. You can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And for more information about my other podcast, you can go to 10minutemurder.com. Some stories stay unsolved. Some stories don't have a clean ending. The one today is both. But sometimes asking the right questions is all we really get. All right, take a breath, touch grass, and avoid sketchy trails if you can. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening.